Okay. The City Club of Chicago prides itself on being the premier club in the city of Chicago for public discourse on subjects that are important to our city and society. Today's discussion, emphasis on the word discussion, on the Cook County justice system and with our rather exceptional panelists that I will introduce like they need it, is living proof that the City Club is the place to be. We have Chief Judge Timothy Evans. We have State's Attorney, a little quick, State's Attorney Anita Alvarez, Sheriff Tom Dart, County Board President Toni Preckwinkle. And for all you foreign guests that not living in Cook County, they all are Cook County ahead of it, so you know. I mean, I don't want you to get confused. So, remember, 2 quick points. This is going to be a discussion, not a debate. And before they even open their mouths, we have a whole slew of questions. So, it is nice when the questions sort of reflect what's being said, but I'll read them, you know, as long as they are to the point. So, raise your hand. Is that Jack back there? Our guy Jack, you're Jack, right? Raise your hand. There you go. With all these law enforcement people are a little nervous, you know. Okay. Kid doesn't want to raise his hand. I don't like it. All right. I mean, tell you, the sting worked. Okay. So, we'll just go down starting with I'm going to call him Tim, with Judge Evans, going back to the days of Drexel Chevrolet, Your Honor.
I'm still Tim.
My dad. I mean, you know, I'll stop. One of the opening question, and there's no clock, so just go until, and if you really go too far, I will show incredible courage and cut you off. That criminals belong in jail. However, everybody in jail is not a criminal. We have seen so much of this going on in the news, and obviously we're one of the giant counties in the country. So what's your take on that, on this seemingly intersection of safety and civil and basic First Amendment rights? Your Honor, why don't you start off and just give your view, and then we'll throw it open for questions, but everybody has a shot.
All right, thank you very much. First, let me thank the members of this great club for the invitation to me and to my colleagues. We are thrilled to be here. One of the things that will probably emerge from today's discussion is the fact that we have worked collaboratively and cooperatively over the last 18 months, and we certainly have dealt with issues like the issue that is being raised with respect to this particular question. When we first started this discussion, the average population in the jail was more than 10,500. And today, the population is down under 8,000. We certainly do not wish to have anyone incarcerated who does not need to be incarcerated, but we have to take into consideration several things. The first, of course, is that someone who has been accused is to be presumed innocent until proven otherwise. But at the same time, we have to protect the public while the case is pending. We have to make certain that the law is carried out with respect to whether the person who's been arrested will show up in court when that person is supposed to show up, and whether that person is likely to offend while the case is pending. That is to say, hurt a witness, hurt a member of the public while the case is pending. We embraced a process some time ago, back in June of 2013, which combines an opportunity to keep the public safe and at the same time permit someone to be released whether or not that person can afford the bail that you've heard so much about. It is called the EMI system. It's electronic monitoring on an I-bond. And so many of the people who might otherwise be, quote-unquote, locked up at 26 in California are now permitted to return to the community, prepare for their day in court without being locked up. That process has saved the taxpayers, by the way, more than $70 million per year by the process that we are now pursuing. And in addition to that, when I was here last, I talked a little bit about a new process that I think will be even a fairer process. And it is a process where we rely on a risk assessment tool that assesses the factors that are pertinent as to whether this person should be locked up pending the trial or not. It's called the Public Safety Assessment Tool, and as I said I would do when I was last here, we have brought in the best and the brightest who are involved in this field. The Arnold Foundation has granted a commitment to Cook County for a year and a half free of charge to the taxpayers, and they brought in Dr. Marie Van Nostrum to assist us. We started training all of the stakeholders in January of this year. That training will go through January through June 30th, and this new process that I'm describing will start July 1st.
Tim, that's a good place to stop. We got a lot of questions. I know.
Thank you very much.
I know. Make off. You're in the council, and RJD's in the chair, so they'll slow you down.
All right.
All right, Ms. Alvarez.
Okay.
Same question.
All right. First of all, I want to thank all of you for being here today, taking time out of your busy schedules, and the City Club, once again, for hosting this. And as Judge Evans said, all of us here on this panel have been working together for almost 2 years now, and we meet regularly to discuss what we can do differently, what we have been doing, and what's working, what's not working, and this is all in conjunction with the Administrative Office of the Illinois Courts. I think we've come a long way, and it's really because we're all dedicated and involved in what we hope to do in the future. When I took over as Cook County State's Attorney, there were 6 deferred or alternative courts that were in existence. There are now 29, almost 30. We're going to have 30, right, Judge, in probably a month.
Absolutely.
And that's a good thing. One of the things that we focused on, and what I focus on in the state's attorney's office, now I've been a prosecutor a long time, 28 years, so I can tell you my office clearly has evolved. I personally have evolved. And when you look at what can we do better in the criminal justice system, and we look at those low-level offenders, nonviolent crime, and there's some prosecutors in this room that I know will agree with me, we've seen those cases that have come in the system, and it's a revolving door and keep going, keep going. So the question is, what should we do, and how do we be smart on these types of cases? So I'm very happy that we have gotten all of our alternative programs up and running. We've been recognized on a national level for our new deferred prosecution programs, focusing on first-time offenders with the nonviolent crime. And it's been great. The judiciary has embraced this wholeheartedly, that allows us to get these people in alternative programs as opposed to putting them in the jail. With the increase in the amount of electronic monitoring on offenders, that we've seen the decrease in the amount of people sitting in Cook County Jail. We have a new deferred prosecution program that I just announced 2 weeks ago in regards to drugs. And we've worked on that quite a while to come up with that, because now we have definitive data and results from our deferred prosecution programs. Last year, there were 6,000 people in a deferred prosecution program, another 1,000 people on an alternative sentencing program. So if you look at those numbers, they continue to grow, continue to grow. We think it's a good thing. On our deferred prosecution program on the misdemeanor level, we've had a 90% success rate, and we are not seeing these people coming back into the system, and that's what we're looking at, and that's what we're hoping. However, I think to have a intelligent discussion about the criminal justice system, we can't ignore the fact, and we must talk about violence. we must talk about violence. As a state's attorney, that's my number one priority is public safety. And we see the violence, unfortunately, here in the city of Chicago and entire of Cook County. So we can't ignore the fact that we have guns on the street in the hands of the wrong people. We can't ignore the fact that we are losing each and every day more and more of our young children to senseless violence. The past 2 days I spent at 26th in California watching the arguments of the murder of Chicago police officer Flisk on duty responding to a burglary to auto when he was executed, and I mean executed. He and the victim of that burglary to auto, Mr. Stephen Peters, both lost their lives from an offender who executed them, shot them both twice in the head, and he was on parole for an armed robbery. And then in the next courtroom, I went to another floor and watched the jury come back on the murder of a 6-year-old little girl in Little Village who was sitting on her mother's lap on her front porch when one gangbanger drove by, shot at the house because there was an opposing gangbanger that lived in that house. And who lost her life? A 6-year-old little girl. We can't ignore that. So I think to have a healthy discussion, we have to talk about violence. We have to talk about what we need in regards to our laws when it comes to guns. I'm in favor of strengthening our gun laws because I think the people who are out there running around with the guns, the gangbangers who are creating all this havoc on the street, need to be held accountable. And with that being said, I believe what we've done is, we're being smarter on crime because we're looking at those low-level cases and looking at the drug offenders, knowing full well that many of them need a treatment, they need help, and so they're not going to be on the street with the guns killing people. So we have to make sure we balance our resources, keep our resources where we need them. I think my resources need to focus on the violent crime.
Okay, Anita. Very good. Sheriff Dart, you're up.
Thank you. I agree. We've been working together on a lot of different things lately to try to make the system better. We, like every other jurisdiction around the country, have been the beneficiary of the fact that national crime trends over the last 10 years, but going back even further, have all been declining. So should we have less people in the jail? Well, of course we should. Everyone else is doing it, so we should as well. So we've benefited from that. We've benefited from a really great relationship the judiciary and ourselves have worked on with the electronic monitoring program. I mean, there was a period of time where we literally had 0 people on electronic monitoring. Now we have 2,300 people on electronic monitoring. And so when you look at some of the numbers of the jail population right now, which is a little over 7,000, you add in the EM population, things like that. Have we decreased from the days when I was at 11,000? Yeah, I'm down to maybe a little, about 10,000 in my custody, whether it's in the jail or on electronic monitoring. So it's been going down. That's all positive. But the thing that I keep circling back to is, do we have the right people in the jail, and do we have them there for the proper amount of time? And I'll tell you categorically the answer I feel strongly about is no, absolutely not. I look at it as we've become the dumping ground for a dysfunctional system where the players that I'm talking about, frankly, are not in this room. The fact of the matter is that on any given day, over a third of my population is seriously mentally ill. At the time that we have shut down, 2 whole divisions have been shut down. Phil Rogers was so kind to let me know that he did a scan of lawsuits and found out that I'm the #1 defendant in the state of Illinois.
There you go, Tom.
Yay! My dad would have been so proud of me. And so most of the lawsuits, though, had hovered around the issue of overcrowding. Overcrowding is not the issue right now. Overcrowding is not it. What it is that the divisions are closed. What is the only area of the jail that is not only overcrowded today, but is overcrowded every day with people sleeping on the floor? The mental health unit. Every single day. And why is that? Because systemically, we have thrown all of the mental health programs away. The people who do these programs are saints. How they're struggling to hang on, I'll never understand, but they're doing it. We just are losing one of the biggest providers out there. This is an integrated system, and when you take a large part of it and throw it out, you have a system that's dysfunctional. And that's what we have here. We have a place where jails were not supposed to be the largest mental health provider in anywhere, but yet in the country, 45 states, the largest mental health provider is their jail or their prison. I mean, it's an embarrassment. We all should be horribly embarrassed about that. But in addition to that, the population that I see in the jail at given times on low-level offenses that in no way are jeopardizing the safety of the community is astounding to me. And it's one of those things where I think inherently there isn't a bad person involved. There's certainly no one up here, but it's a system. And a system doesn't look at people as individuals. And so people sit there, and at times they sit there for extended periods of time. I have like 400 or about 200 people, 250 people who their most serious offense is retail theft. Retail theft, mind you. And their average length of stay for those people are 112 days. That's insane. I have just about 100 people on criminal trespass to property, meaning they broke in some place most likely to sleep. Their length of stay is, average length of stay is 140 days. This is not a system that's working properly. And so while there's many, many good things going on here, we have to address it because these are humans. These are real people. I couldn't agree with Anita more. We have some horrible, evil people in that jail. And the system will take care of them. We've got great prosecutors, judges to take care of that. But the majority of the people there are people who've made horrible mistakes throughout their lives, had very little options to start with, who I think many of us would sit there and say, if I was born in that same place, I'd be sitting right next to them. And so for them, we have to have a thoughtful system that's a continuum of care, which is frankly what we have done. We have morphed into a mental health facility now, where one of the leaders of my jail is a psychologist. And that's what we spend all our days in, is trying to transition, put plans together for people to connect them with services. So when we look at this, we have to look well beyond it, and God knows what the governor's office is talking about will be a disaster. You know what, Tony, we might as well start opening up more of it. We will have to reopen. We will have to reopen those divisions if they go ahead with this stuff, and it will be all mental health units, and that's what it will be. So when they start thinking about these great savings, I wish somebody there has a functioning brain and will think about this.
On that, we should, thank you, Sheriff. President Preckwinkle?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I'm grateful to all of you for your interest in our criminal justice system, in particular in criminal justice reform. As many of you know, I'm a history teacher by profession, so let me talk a little bit about context here. The United States has 5% of the world's population and 25% of the people in the entire world in jail or prison. We have 5% of the population and 25% of the people in jail or prison. Now, unless you think that Americans are somehow more criminally inclined than people elsewhere in the world, we're making some terrible mistakes. Furthermore, if you look at my jail, and this is true of jails across the country, 86% of the people in the jail are black and brown. And the black and brown population of Cook County is 50%. So about a quarter of the population is African American, a quarter of the population is Latino. But 86% of the people in the jail are black and brown. And they're there largely because they can't pay their bonds, because we have a cash bond system. So when we're talking about criminal justice in this country, we have to understand that we're talking about race and class. Now, those are uncomfortable subjects for most Americans to address, particularly in light of criminal justice. But we have to understand that that's the fact. 86% of the people in the jail are black and brown. One of my bitterly favorite stories is that we had a delegation from South Africa that came to our jail to visit. They got to the end of their tour and they said, "Where's the jail for white people?" So that's where we are in this country. We're incarcerating at incredible rates black and brown people. And let me just say, if you look at our detention and incarceration rates for white people, they're about the same as Northern Europe. The reason we have so many people in jail is because we incarcerate at incredible numbers black and brown people. As I said, this is about race and class. Now, when I was elected to this job in December of 2010, there were 10,000 people in the jail, plus or minus. And there were 10,000 people in the jail until September of 2013. Although all of the actors in the criminal justice system, including those up here, as well as our public defender and clerk of the court, agreed that we could reduce the jail population because very few people in the jail are serving a sentence, as Sheriff Dart knows. Only about 10%. You know, if you talk to most people on the street, they think the jail is for people who've committed a crime and been convicted. No, the jail is where people await their trial, by and large. So 90% of the people in our jail are awaiting trial. 70% of those people are awaiting trial for nonviolent offenses, some of the offenses that Sheriff Dart talked about. People in jail for shoplifting for more than 100 days. And they haven't been convicted yet. They're accused but not convicted. 70% are awaiting trial for nonviolent offenses. Only 30% are awaiting trial for the kind of violent offenses that you heard the state's attorney speak of. So it's our goal to try to get the jail population down. It's presently below 8,000, the lowest population since 1991, of which everybody up here can be proud. But we think we can get it even lower. Thank you. I want to say that I'm very grateful. In September of 2013, after 2.5 years, although all of us agreed that we should bring the jail population down and we could do that safely, there had been no reduction, and I wrote to the Supreme Court and asked them for their help because they're responsible for the courts in Illinois. Justice Burke, would you stand up again, please? Justice Burke, we thank you. I'm grateful to all the members of the court for responding to my request that they help us deal with the efficiency and fairness of the criminal justice system here in Cook County. And as I said, I'm grateful to all the members, but particularly to Justice Burke, who's been a champion of criminal justice reform in Cook County. I want to thank the Chief Judge. We've seen some dramatic changes in how judges deal with offenders that come before them in bond court, accused offenders who come before them in bond court. In December of 2010, 19% of defendants were released on electronic monitoring or I-bonds, so about a fifth. In March of 2015, that number had risen to 66%. I want to thank you, Judge Evans. And by the way, we're still at the same percentage, at about 3 and 4%, of people who don't show up or offend between the time they're in bond court and then their case is disposed of. So this hasn't had an impact on the number of people who don't show up or the number of people who reoffend. But 67%, almost 2/3 now, are released on I-bonds or electronic monitoring. So I'm very grateful to the Chief Judge and to his staff, who I promised I would acknowledge. Lavon Haywood, head of adult probation, Juan Hinojosa, head of pretrial services division, and Mike Carroll, who's been leading the bond court project. Bond court is the port of entry into the criminal justice system. Thank you.
Toni, could you wrap it up though? We have all these questions.
I'm going to thank a couple more people, and then I'll call it quits.
Don't call it quits. Just
Our public defender, I want to thank her and her staff for helping us increase the number of people accused of nonviolent crimes who are now out on pretrial release rather than sitting in our jail. Thank you, Amy Campanelli. Clerk Brown, we're very grateful to you for your leadership in technology improvements. We appreciate your good work in that regard, and I want to acknowledge some not-for-profit partners, Thresholds, Task, and the Safer Foundation, who've helped us screen and interview defendants in bond court and enroll detainees in county care. County care, of course, is our Medicaid expansion program, and we have behavioral and mental health services as part of county care. We've enrolled 10,000 people in the jail in the county care program so that they have mental health and behavioral health services when they get out. And hopefully that helps reduce the kind of revolving door that the sheriff has referred to. Thank you.
okay. Now, some of these questions are geared to one person, but everyone could pipe in, like I'm telling these folks they could pipe in, but they can't. So, starting off, first for Sheriff Dart, Roger Martinez. Has Cermak, take two, Mayor Cermak, I can't pronounce his name. Has Cermak Hospital seen the same decrease in population that the jail has seen?
No, and that's Roger. That's the if ever there was something that screams out is what is wrong, what's going on here. That's it. I mean, literally, we have shut down 2 divisions in the jail over the course of the last few years. And mind you, with the summer coming, populations have a tendency to go up a little bit, so we might have to adjust that. But Cermak is filled all the time with people, and honest to God, the people that are there should not be there. They are not inherently criminals at all. They're people who are ill, and a manifestation of their illnesses, they commit some insignificant crime. We have a guy right now that has cost us cost all of us in this room, probably close to $1 million in health bills because he constantly eats the jail. Eats the jail. He has some issues, some serious issues, so he takes parts, screws, and he eats them. He does it on a regular basis. The things that we have to do, we have to keep him in a room by himself, more often than not naked, so that he can't use anything to try to hurt himself. Then we have to have one correctional officer who sits there around the clock at the entrance of the door to watch this guy all the time. And in spite of that, he finds ways to get little pieces of metal to eat, strips of leather, because they have leather restraints on them. Here's where it doesn't work. It doesn't work, and I can give you countless other examples where across the country, the easy thing to do was to cut mental health services, and they've done it. And what ends up happening is the people don't get better, they don't get treatment, they go to jails and prisons and emergency rooms. And we're seeing that over and over again, and it's not getting better. The diversion courts, they're great. I always tell people they're great things, but their court calls are very small. By nature, they're small court. 200, 300 cases a year. I have 3,000 people in the jail on a given day with mental illness. So we're not getting at it. What needs to be done, we attempted to do years ago and it hasn't worked out well, is to divert people at the front end so they never even enter into the system. That they're people that at the outset they're put into a mental health setting where there is no need to have a conviction even. If they're following the program, the case goes away. We've opened up our own mental health transition center. I closed down the boot camp over a year and a half ago, and we have the first in the country, a mental health transition center where people are getting ready to leave our place who are mentally ill. We transition them out to this therapeutic setting, we get them ready for the street, we work with them on every aspect of their life. And I can't tell you how many of these guys have come up to me, literally these huge men, hugging me, crying, saying it's the first time anybody ever cared about me, first time I've ever seen a light. So it's a mess.
If I could add, what we need to try to figure out is how to divert people before they get in the criminal justice system who struggle with mental illness. So one of the things we're doing is trying to work with the Chicago Police Department on drop-off centers. So when they encounter people who clearly are struggling with mental illness, they have a place to take them where they can get referred to the services they need rather than putting them in the criminal justice system. Because our criminal justice system is clogged up with low-level drug offenders and with people who struggle with mental illness, and we need to figure out how we're going to deal with that problem other than foisting them off on the sheriff. If we can keep them from coming into the jail in the first place, that's what we need to do.
And the key to that is to give them this, it's called CIT training, which is critical incident training, which all of my staff get, both in the jail and the police out in the street, because it does just that, what Tony's talking about. The police on the street deal with the problem there. Instead of coming to jail, they take them to a hospital and they get them treatment, and it works.
The Chief Judge wants to jump in, not that I want to.
Yeah.
Your Honor.
I certainly agree that we as a society do not treat the mentally ill the way they should be treated. In this country, there are about 2 million mentally ill people in jail. And on top of that, about 75% of those people who are mentally ill are also addicted to drugs in one way or another. So they are duly and hampered. I think that dealing with this as a criminal court problem is not the way to go. Although we have to take things as they are. Right now, for example, I know the police department has a crisis intervention team, and they struggle to try to get the mentally ill treated without incarceration, and I applaud that. We in the court system have probation officers who specialize in dealing with the mentally ill. If they are not kept out of the system, we don't want them to be treated like criminals when they're in our system, and we train our probation officers to be able to deal with them in a humane way. There are almost 700 of them, for example, assigned to this mental health unit in the probation department. In addition to that, in Cook County, we have 6 mental health courts, not only at 26 in California, but also in the districts, so that once people are identified as being mentally ill, they can be treated in such a way that they can get the treatment that they deserve. But more than that, I don't think that anybody should have to go to jail to have access to mental health services.
Okay, Tim. Your Honor, thank you. It's always good to leave on an applause line. State's Attorney, you want to? Okay, Peter Benziger, raise your hand if you have the courage to do it. This is going on the Wall of Fame of the City Club. Never has there been more words written more tinier, and then at the top, the coup de grace. Please read the question or ask me. Sheriff? So, Peter, I'm giving you 25 words. Stand up and what the heck did you ask here?
I want to talk about probation.
5 words. Keep going.
There are 640 shootings so far this year in Chicago. That's 5 a day. In New York City, with 3 times the population. It's half. In LA with 1 million more, it's 40. In New York, the probation officers have caseloads of 46 per office. In Chicago, with over 22 to 30,000 people on probation, caseloads are 106.
And your question is?
One more.
All right, go ahead.
In New York City, they've got those probation officers spread out in 19 different offices, 4 of which we're kind of appointed. In Cook County, probation officers are in court. We need them out where the crimes are. We need lower caseloads, better supervision. What are you going to do about it?
Think it's back, hey, Peter, it almost sounds like it's the early 70s again. Remember those years back? Yeah, some of us do. Okay,
Well,
who,
let me address
briefly,
it first.
because we got a lot more of those.
All right.
Not as long, though. I let the record show.
What he says is absolutely true. Our probation officers are overtaxed. The ratio in the state of Illinois is supposed to be 1 to 80. That is to say, 1 probation officer taking care of 80 people. That's difficult. But as our questioner said, our probation officers are being asked to do much, much more. But I will say this, I'm working with President Preckwinkle and her office in terms of our budget preparation, and we're asking for additional funding. We are working with the administrative office of our state to ask for additional funding, and the training that we are providing to our probation officers is absolutely superior. And I'm confident that working together as we hope we can, we'll be able to get a better ratio. And in the process, the key, and you didn't get a chance to quite cover this, but the key is if we're going to let more people out of jail, the people have to be watched while they're out of jail to protect the public. We can't just open up the jail doors and let everybody walk out. So I applaud you for raising the question, and I assure you if our probation officers are given the chance, they will continue to do the fantastic job they do, even with the large caseloads, but that we want to do 2 things. We want to treat people fairly with the presumption of innocence, but by the same token, we have to protect the public that we all represent. Thank you very much.
Anita?
Yeah, I'd like
If I
to-
could add
because-
one thing.
Oh, wait,
Let me just say-
Ms. Alvarez.
I'd like to address, you actually had 2 things in that question, and that was the gun issue. And it's true that Chicago takes more guns off the street than New York or Los Angeles. And we've seen more shootings than New York and Los Angeles, and that's a reality. And I think it goes back to what I mentioned in my little opening, and that was, you know, what do our gun laws look like? And New York has historically had stronger gun laws than us, historically. And what happens, you know, with an offender on a UUW, an unlawful use of a weapon, the minimum is a year. What does he serve? He serves 3 months, and he's back out on the street. Unfortunately, what we see, back out on the street and reoffending, okay, and we're not talking about a retail theft, reoffending as another shooter, as an armed robber, as a, you know, aggravated battery, whatever it might be. So again, it goes back to, I think we got to look at those laws, and we have to make sure that we're being, you know, we have to be tough on the violence. We have to, because unfortunately, we're losing too many people, and that's part of it.
Tony? I'm sorry. President Preckwinkle?
Toni does fine. So let me just say, one of the things I think we need to do is put fewer people into the criminal justice system. I mean, the way in which to bring down the caseload for probation officers and to try to focus more energy on violent crime is to have fewer nonviolent offenders and people accused of nonviolent offenses in our jail. They're not offenders until they're convicted, and as I said, 90% of the people in the jail are awaiting trial. So we've got to figure out, I mean, I'm in favor of decriminalizing the possession of small amounts of marijuana. I mean, and controlled substances. This is crazy. We're detaining people in our criminal justice system for things that we find, you know, annoying and offensive, what I call petty antisocial behavior. You know, they arrest kids for having joints in their pocket and shooting dice on the sidewalk. I mean, this is ridiculous. That is annoying, but I don't think it merits being put in the criminal justice system and having a record. And especially since they do this to black and brown kids and not white kids. I mean, this is disgraceful. So let's have fewer people in our criminal justice system by decriminalizing the possession of small amounts of marijuana and controlled substances, not putting people in jail for retail theft. I mean, this is, you shoplift 6 bars of soap and you end up in jail for 100 days. I mean, waiting the disposition of your case. This aside, I would come at it from a social justice perspective, but if you're looking at it even from a fiscal perspective, it costs $143 a day to keep somebody in jail. Why are we jailing people for stealing 6 bars of soap at $143 a day as they await their disposition of their case? And the way in which we're pursuing this petty antisocial behavior has a tremendous social cost and a tremendous fiscal cost.
Okay. Moderator, Ms. Robin, showing tremendous restraint. I hope you appreciate that. Thank you. This question is from Susan Brown. Legible and short. That's what we like. For Ms. Alvarez, we hear so much about keeping people out of jail, but what about the rising numbers of rape and human trafficking? Why don't we talk about the victim? I don't know if those statistics are right, but you can handle it.
Okay. Well, we do talk about the victim, and as the state's attorney, who better than to talk about the rights of the victim but me? The victims get lost many times when we start talking about the criminal justice system. And unfortunately, that's what my assistants are doing each and every day in the criminal court, and that's holding the hands of those victims. You know, when I was in court watching these cases these past 2 days, to see the courtroom packed with the 6-year-old little girl who was killed, everyone, her family members, her friends, and other advocates, you know, it's heart-wrenching. We have to talk about the victims. We have to talk about the fact that, you know, President Preckwinkle talks about, disparity in the minority population in the jail. But I think we have to talk about the fact that who our victims are. Our victims are minorities. That's who's being shot. That's who's being killed. And I know people don't like to talk about it, but I think we have to talk about it because there are way too many black and brown children 6 feet under that should not be there. And so we have to address it. We have to address it. When we talk about human trafficking, and I'm so proud of our unit, our human trafficking unit, we have come up with a task force and approach that has become known as the Chicago approach, and we train nationally. And what's really, when you look at the topic of human trafficking, people think, oh, it happens in another country, right? It doesn't happen here. It happens here. It happens here. And Chicago ranks number 3 on the hotline, the FBI federal hotline for human trafficking. Number 3. Why? Because we're a wonderful place to come and visit. We're a convention hub, tourist attraction, so we are ripe for that type of crime. And we've been able to use our new statute, the Illinois Safe Children's Act, which we drafted back in 2010. We've been able to use that to take down several operations, human trafficking, and the saddest part, when you see those cases, Little Girl Lost was a case that our first case where we used a state wiretap to put a human trafficking case together. 10 defendants arrested and charged on that case. Every one of those young girls, they were all young girls, the youngest being 13 years old, 13 to 19 years old, every one a minority, every one of them from either the west side or the south side of the city of Chicago. 10 defendants were arrested and charged. All 10 defendants pled guilty, which never happens in a case like that. And it's because we've developed a new way to get evidence against these perpetrators. And so the human trafficking, I could talk for hours on that, but it is a passion of mine, and we're doing some tremendous things here in Cook County and being recognized nationally for it.
Okay. Anyone else?
If I can just jump in real quick. Our office has a trafficking unit, and much like Anita's prosecuting unit, ours is known around the country. Our people are sent everywhere because we have put the book together on how to do it. I hired 4 former prostitutes who have been working for me now for 8 years, and they have this unique perspective that helps us tremendously with dealing with the people that we take into our custody who are these outrageous victims. I mean, just the stories are horrible. And so our people, fantastic. I know the time is limited here. Last night we had an incredibly unique one where we had a citizen was scanning the back page, and as many of you know, I've sued Craigslist, and between our suit and other things, they shut down. We're chasing Backpage now, just despicable people. And this woman went on Backpage looking at, she saw an ad where the person looked too young. She contacted them. A guy answered the phone. She thought something was up, so she called us. We went out and we arrested the guy, and sure enough, he was trafficking a young girl. And that was just last night, but that was a citizen helping us, and they were able to get a hold of us to do it. But our unit's great, our unit's overworked, and in my unending plea to try to get some sanity down in Springfield, think about this for a second. If you were looking, you were traffickers, Anita said, and it's 100% right, I try to beat this into people's head. Do we have cases where the victims are from Eastern Europe, foreign countries, Southeast Asia? Yeah, we have those cases too, but the majority of them are local people being trafficked by local folks. You know, the bad guys are local as well. That's the norm. Where is their biggest population pool that they try to target? Young girls. And where do we have an abundance of young girls coming out of a failed system, our child welfare system? If you want to talk about the pipeline into the trafficking world, look at this failed system. The Tribune did an amazing piece just this past year about the residential homes and the problems there. We talk to these girls on a regular basis, and when you have a child welfare system that fails them routinely, these people are preying on them all the time, the most vulnerable children. So once again, when we talk about the cuts down in Springfield, they need to do things much better in DCFS. We all agree with that. But we cannot lose track of the fact these children have the biggest target on them that you can ever imagine by these horrible people.
Okay.
If I
Okay,
could add a couple
Well,
of
let
things.
Tony go first, and then, Your Honor, you'll anchor it.
All right.
Think this is easy, huh? Go ahead, Tony.
Okay, let me return to the fact of who's in our jail. 70% of the people who are awaiting trial are accused of nonviolent offenses. If we could take large numbers of those people, and we're moving in that direction, out of the jail as they await disposition of their cases, so we can focus our resources on people who are accused of violent crimes, we'll be able to better deal with those accused offenders. But we're clogging up our jail with low-level drug offenses and people who are accused of shoplifting. This doesn't make any sense. So I think we need to look at the laws that put people in jail for shoplifting, the laws that put people in jail for low levels of drug offenses, so that we can focus our efforts on those accused of violent crimes. And let me just say, if you look at the communities which have the highest level of violent crime, they're also the communities that have the highest poverty levels, the lowest levels of educational attainment, the lowest levels of employed adults, the highest levels of unemployment. I mean, these are communities that are struggling, and we need a strategy, if we're going to deal with violence, that includes things other than the criminal justice system. We have to work to create stable communities, particularly in the city of Chicago, but all over the county, in which adults have an opportunity to be employed, in which the schools are decent, in which the neighborhoods are safe. And if we only think that the way in which we're going to deal with the violence problem is through our criminal justice system, I think we're sadly mistaken, and we won't achieve the results that we hope for.
Your Honor.
I wanted to just follow up on the question concerning human trafficking and the prostitution issue, and it's a very sensitive issue in this community. But I believe Judge Rosemary Grant Higgins is here today. I heard her being announced. She headed one of our most successful programs dealing with prostitution. It was called WINGS, Women in Need of Specialized Services. When the women came into that program, many of them were committed to simply getting back out again into the street to work for the pimps and people who are taking advantage of them, victimizing them. This program that I'm describing to you is a program where women primarily, but some men, were brought into the court system. They were treated like victims. They were given the kind of services that they deserved, trauma services, all kinds of services to help them get the kind of education that they needed, GEDs and so forth. We gave them additional housing so they didn't have to leave court going back into the households where these pimps were located. And instead of them leaving court, being committed to get back to prostitution, instead they were given jobs. Many of them were able to get on with their lives, and they would leave there saying, giving honor to God, who is the head of my life. And if Judge Rosemary Grant Higgins is here, I'd love for her to stand and receive a great round of applause. I see her, she had to leave. Paul Biebel, who is the presiding judge of the criminal division, is here, and I'd like him to stand and be recognized.
Where's Paul Biebel?
Yeah.
Ah,
Let me say further, the issue of prostitution has now been made a misdemeanor so that we can help even more of the victims of this service. The state's attorney and I will be announcing a program which will be starting on June 1st that will be operated at 555 West Harrison, that will once again treat these victims like human beings, to treat them fairly. Lastly, let me just say this, because I don't want to have anybody leave under the impression that the only reason people are locked up is if they steal a few candy bars. One of the things that we have to do is consider 36 issues when a person is arrested. And many of the people who you hear about who are charged with the theft of 6 or 7 candy bars have a long criminal history where they have been convicted of attempted murder, attempted robbery, all kinds of things. We can't open the door to let them go just because they're charged currently with stealing candy bars. I want you to know that our judges do a fantastic job. They're not clairvoyant, and that's one of the reasons why we're bringing in the new risk assessment tool. So we're not basing our decisions on hunches, but instead on scientific factors that are data-driven. And you will hear more about that program that will start July 1st of this year. So
Okay.
I believe our judges do a
Your Honor.
fantastic job.
well, we have a lot of questions here. Emily Smith, you have 2. Bruce Handler, you have 2. There's a Nora Handler, probably an aide. She has 1. And then there's another Smith. So this is sort of the Handler-Smith incorporation. I'm not asking any of them because they're all basically the same. And I'll give each of you, maybe we'll start with you, Tony, reverse order, and you'll have minute and a half. Well, heck, what do I say? You take as long as you want anyways. If you listen to this conversation, as someone who's been in this game a long time, you really have the dynamic of punishing, or shall we say, putting bad people away for a long time, keeping them off the street, versus not putting people in the system who commit rather inconsequential or petty crime because of not only the social factor, but Sheriff Dart said, the cost factor. So, those 2 forces, how do you find the middle ground? And if you want to invoke Solomon, you may. Go ahead, Tony, you're first.
Well, first of all, let's go back to some of the things that were talked about earlier. Drop-off centers for people who are struggling with mental illness so that they can get referred to the services they need rather than being put in the criminal justice system. Diverting as many people, prostitutes, diverting as many people as we can from the criminal justice system before they get to bond court, not as they're in the criminal justice system, but diverting them before they get into the system. I think that's one focus that we have to take and put some energy into. I also think that we've had a lot of success, and again, I want to thank Chief Judge Evans and Judge Biebel and the folks at the Criminal Courts Building in changing the way that judges look at the people who come before them. And again, our jail population is down to 7,800, the lowest it's been since 1991, and we have not seen an uptick in the number of people who reoffend or the number of people who don't show up for their trial dates. So a lot more people are in the community, working, going to school, whatever, as they wait the disposition of their case, and it hasn't had an impact on public safety. And those statistics come from the Chief Judge's office, and again, I'm grateful to him. You know, we have a lot of work to do in making our criminal justice system both more efficient and more fair. But I ask you again to think about the fact that this system disproportionately impacts people of color, disproportionately impacts people of color, who end up in our criminal justice system for things that young white people do not get arrested for, and struggle with the burden of a criminal justice record for the rest of their lives. So I hope we'll keep that in mind as we talk about the changes that we need to make in criminal justice in Cook County and in this country.
Round of applause, please. Sheriff Dart.
What was the question again?
think I could repeat what I,
No.
Jackie, would you mind repeating my question from?
People with, a lot of people in the criminal justice system who don't need to be there.
Oh, okay. I think I got it.
Thanks for paying attention.
Yeah, you're easy to ignore.
He's the sheriff, he got all these big guys here. Oh, you're right.
Exactly.
Go ahead.
My entourage. That's why I was late. I parked very far away and walked here. The reality of it is that there is a way, and Tony's talked about it, other people up here have talked about it as well, to distinguish the groups here. I mean, there's no kidding. When you go to the jail, you go over to Division 9, there's people there with horrific crimes, horrific backgrounds. You go to the majority of the other divisions, you'll find that the people are in there for crimes that you end up scratching your head about. And you sit there and say, is there not another way we can go about doing that? And as Tony mentioned, I've mentioned it ad nauseum. I start always with the human side of it, you know, from the social justice side. Is this right for this person? And I always come up with the answer is no. But then from the fiscal side of it, it makes absolutely no sense whatsoever to continue to do this. Then have none of the services on the outside to make sure that this person can succeed. So you know exactly what's going to happen. I have these conversations with the detainees all the time, and I'll ask them, I go, why should I expect that you're not going to come back in here? And they'll tell me, well, I probably will, because I'm going back. I have a felony conviction now. Didn't have a lot of opportunities in my community when I left, and I'm going to have less now. I'll probably end up dealing dope again, because, you know, what else am I going to do to earn money, feed myself? And it's very difficult for me to then get on my high horse and start chastise them about, well, that's against the law and all the rest of the stuff. The pragmatic thing here is that we have to have these systems within these communities, and it's a very difficult thing, and especially, I'll tell you what, suburban Cook County, I've opened up my own mental health clinic out of my own budget without asking any money from anybody. I have taken money out of my own budget to open up my own mental health clinic. So instead of complaining about all these insane cuts that are going on, whether it's the city or the state, we have put our own money there. Where did we do it? We did it out in the south suburbs. Why is that? I did an overlay of where is mental health services in the county, and where are the majority of the people that I'm sending out into the community, and I found that they didn't match at all. That once you got south of like 87th Street, there was virtually no mental health services for people. So we put a mental health center in the Markham Courthouse, where we now take people when they leave, and we drive them out there to show them this is going to be your new person that's going to work with you and help you. So that we're putting together a thoughtful plan from the beginning to end. And those are the things we need to do here. If we're going to walk away from this with anything, it's we got to do practical things, because we can talk about the big things, and the big things, there's always big reasons why they don't happen. The small things are where you have the little victories around here. So, as I say, we opened up Mental Health Transition Center, first in the country. We've opened up our own mental health clinic, first in the country. But we've gone beyond that. We have our own sheriff's hotline where we have people that call us and we go out and help them in the street that are not even in custody anymore, just to help them. But that's where we're going to make the difference here, and that's where we're going to start being able to shift it so our resources are fully on the bad people and not these folks that should not be in here. It makes no sense. Honest to God, I look at these people, the majority I'm talking about too, frankly, when I talk about the retail thieves, I look at their backgrounds. Their entire background with an occasional anomaly is all retail theft. It's not as if retail theft, homicide, retail theft, Christmas. No, it's retail theft, occasionally a robbery, maybe, 20 years ago or something. So these are people who have historically done the same things, which is tried to survive on the street, and we need to treat them that way and not just grind them up in the system and spit them out.
Okay. Round of applause for the sheriff. That was a very good answer. Just think if he had heard the question. State's Attorney Alvarez.
You know, I think just listening to everyone's comments, and one thing that keeps popping up in my head, and that is resources, right? Resources. There are many tremendous things that we're doing, and that we're doing with less, but we've still been able to get programs off the ground. But there are more things that we'd love to be able to do. And if we can divert someone with a mental health issue before he hits the criminal justice system, I think that's tremendous. The question is, do we have the services? Do we have the drop-off centers? Does the city have the ability to absorb these people? And and that's a stark reality that we have to face. I think what we're doing in our office and looking at these cases when they come into the bond courts, that's their first connection to us in the bond court. And so now with the programs that we've developed, we're looking at them, and through our bond court initiative, looking at these cases as they come in, first contact with the criminal justice system. What can we do? Can we divert this person this way? Can we divert this person? Do they fit? So I think that's a tremendous help at the first point of contact with the criminal justice system, that we have all of our programs in place. And as we said, and Judge Evans, addressed it, we're about to open up yet another new court when it comes to prostitution. And I think this is tremendous. We have all these specialty courts, but they're doing tremendous things. And I think, when you look at the number of people in the jail, I have to believe that, our diversion programs and what we've been working on past years are truly contributing to that. And so we're going to continue to do that. And as long as, I have my partners here in the criminal justice system, I think we can make it happen. But I think resources is always going to be an issue. When I announced my drug policy, I got asked those questions. Well, this is wonderful, but who's going to pay for this? I can tell you this: by the time I got back up to the office after I had met with that nerve-wracking editorial board there at the Tribune, I had all these emails from social service providers saying, this is tremendous. What do you need? We'd like to help you. We'd like to be a part of this. So I know there are willing, not-for-profits out there that want to help. The matter is, how are we going to be able to fund all of this? We did some research. There is money reimbursement in Medicare in the Affordable Care Act, and so we're hoping to tap into that for our new drug program. I think we'll be successful, but I'm happy to do my part to, as I said, to be smart on crime, use those resources to divert people out that can be diverted out, but make sure we have the resources necessary to handle the violent crime.
Round of applause for the attorney. Tim, to close.
Well, thank you again, Paul, for the invitation to all of us to be here today. I think it must be clear that this criminal justice system that we are all discussing is one on a path to reform. Frequently, the despair that permeates throughout some of these communities are in desperate need of a criminal justice system that is fair and open and is addressing the needs of all of the members of this community. Sometimes our criminal justice system is the only place where there is a sense of hope, surrounded by hopelessness. And we're not here to project a view that our system is perfect. What we do in a democratic society is we work towards perfection. We're moving in, I think, a good direction. We don't want anybody to be discriminated against. We don't want anybody to be incarcerated who doesn't need to be incarcerated. But we have to protect the members of the public in the process of trying to be fair to those who are charged with crime. I'm pleased to work with my colleagues on this podium. I think we are moving in the right direction. And my goal in the days ahead is a high-performance court, one that meets or exceeds the national standards on every aspect of a criminal justice system: high integrity, fairness, expeditious disposition of cases, to do so in a way that is fair and considerate of all who are involved in the system. I won't be satisfied until we get there, and I appreciate having an opportunity to share some of our success with you today.
Round of applause for the judge.